You ever get tired? Tired of feeling stuck? Tired of the pain? Of all the patterns that just keep leading to nowhere? Yeah, well, guess what? We all do. Now, the only thing left is, how are we going to end all of that? Are we going to let life keep happening to us? Are we going to embrace for life to happen for us? We all got to make that choice. And right now is the time. So let's grow. Everybody, welcome to Grow Through It. My name is CureAge. I go by Cure. Tonight we have two new guests, Witch Toker and Papa Bear will be in here shortly. A little bit about myself and the show is we talk about adversities, how we grow through them. So something that in your life has been rough, has been hard, but you didn't just let it take that from you. You didn't let it take that part of you, that good part of you, and just destroy it. Instead, you took it, you turned it into, how the saying, blessing in disguise. And when you do that, you find yourself coming out of that situation or adversity even better than you were before it all happened. So, a little bit of background about myself. I grew up in sports. I was always an athlete, but since I could walk, basically pretty much, I was in martial arts. It's passed down. I kind of was born into it through family members. And as I became a teenager, the UFC got really, really big. And I decided this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or, until I can. This is what I want to do professionally. So I started training MMA for a very long time. It became my job. A lot of people train for fun, for whatever it is, get in shape. This was literally my job. I was training 3 times a day, 5, 6 times a week. And then I was preparing for a professional fight down in LA. I woke up one morning, couldn't walk for more than 5 minutes. It was very hard just taking the steps to get to the bathroom. So I had a very bad injury, and it led to a lot of down road hill for a lot of things, depression, anxiety, things like that. And but through it, I saw a lot of different doctors who helped me. I went through different parts of rehab, learning how to walk again, learning how to, getting my back fixed, everything like that, my hips. But I also couldn't keep away from the gyms. So even here I am, injured, was in crutches for a little bit, and I'm hanging out at these gyms. And I had to be, I was just hanging around the coaches, and all of a sudden I realized, this is somewhere I need to be. And as that was happening, I found people coming to me for advice, and I was shocked. I didn't think I knew that much for people to coming to me for advice. And instead of just shrugging it off, kind of being sour or whatever it may be, because of what happened to me, I kind of just embraced and said, hey, let me help you out. This is what I did. Let's try this. Like yada yada yada. Long story short, fast forward. Basically, I went into the nutrition aspect. I went to the mental and emotional aspect, physical therapy aspect of all training for martial arts and athletes in general, and found myself coaching. And with that, I found coaching to be even more fulfilling than training in the cage fighting in the cage. So, with that being said, that is a little short story of how I grew through my adversity. This is about 10 years ago. So, again, welcome to Grow Through It. For all of you that just joined, please favorite at the top. There's a star. And we're going to introduce our first guest, who is Witch Toker. Please favorite her. She's an awesome person. I spoke with her before the show. And whenever she's ready, she's going to go ahead and hop in the box. And we're going to hear a little bit about her adversity that she faced and how she didn't just go through it, but how she grew through it. So whenever you're ready, Witch Toker. I can't talk tonight, apparently. And again, I appreciate all the gifts from everybody, all the comments. I have respect for the guests. I'm just not trying to interrupt them. So don't think I'm ignoring you. I do see everybody. So, let me fix that for you. All right. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a long Monday, but not a bad one, thankfully.
I get that.
Real quick before we go into it, how long have you been on the app and streaming?
I've been on the app since like 2016, and I've been streaming through the app probably 2016, 2017, somewhere around there.
Very cool. So you're an OG. You're a real OG.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, everybody, please hit Witch Toker with the favorite.
Thank you.
So, Witch, I know you mentioned on the call you had been in a very severe car accident. I don't remember how long ago that was.
It'll be 16 years this December. I was hit by a drunk driver who was going twice the speed limit at like 80 some odd miles with 3 people in his car. He blew through a red light that I had a green for, and I wound up having both my ankles broken. My left was basically like, they said it was like a little TNT stick of dynamite had been inside of my joint, and it just like exploded. There's just shards everywhere. So I've had to have 4 surgeries on my left ankle, 2 within the first year after my accident.
Wow. So that, I mean, I can only imagine how you felt just feeling stuck like that.
I was very angry. That
at the person that hit you, or just angry at life?
Angry at life. I was angry at anyone and everyone that came across me in my path. I was
bitter.
Very
bitter. Like, why am I in this situation? Why did this happen to me? Why do I gotta do this? Yeah, I know how that feels, and that's definitely hard. I think a lot of people here know exactly how that feels.
Yeah, it took me a little while to get past that. Like I was telling you on the call, there was a time that I was sitting in the wheelchair, because I was in a wheelchair after the accident for about a year.
Right.
And it was about 6 months after the accident, and I was sitting in the chair, just staring out the picture window at the pool in my complex, imagining like transferring myself from my wheelchair to my computer chair and picking up my wheelchair and throwing it through the window.
and then how would you get around with that?
Yeah, I didn't do it, obviously.
Right.
But imagining it, the fire that was burning inside of me, the anger, I just suddenly realized, like, if I don't let go of this, it's going to eat me alive for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
And I just decided to start thinking about what could have happened. It could have been somebody else in a different car that didn't take the hit as well. Like, I had just gotten a brand new car 5 months before that had all these fancy new airbags. had it been someone in, you know, like my previous car was an 89 Honda Prelude with 0 airbags.
Right.
Had someone been in a car like that, they wouldn't have survived. So I count myself lucky to have prevented, hopefully.
You went from being angry about it happening and then just kind of realized like it was better you than someone else.
Yeah, I
Like that
eventually,
someone else may have not been able to make it like you did, and you were fortunate enough to actually still be alive. Did
exactly.
you feel kind of grateful that you were at least alive at any point?
Eventually I did. It took me a while to get there. It was after my third surgery on my ankle, and the guy who hit me was in my area for court. Um,
Okay.
and I went to try and talk to him, and his mom was there actually before me. And when they're in jail, they only have one visit per day, depending on where they are. And he wasn't in his home jail because he was transferred down there for court. He only got one visitor per day, no matter what. Um,
Right.
so his mom went and saw him and talked with him. And when she came out, we actually went to Denny's and we sat down and we talked for about an hour. And I explained, you know, that the accident definitely changed my life, but I was choosing to try and see the change as a good change as opposed to something negative
Right.
in my life.
Right. Like a blessing in disguise type sort of
Exactly.
situation. So basically, it just, you seem like you found forgiveness somehow.
I did, yeah.
And did you think that, did that all I'm sorry, did that all come from that moment of being in the window and looking out, wanting to throw your wheelchair out of there and just all the anger? Or did it come from, like, did you maybe do therapy or things like that?
I did a lot of physical therapy after I was out of the wheelchair.
Right.
Um, my legs had atrophied, and
Mm,
I wasn't able to walk without a walker.
oh, okay.
Um, so I did a
I
lot
know
of
what
physical
that's like,
therapy.
obviously.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
it's
know that's
it's so
tough.
much fun, isn't it? So much fun. Um,
It's scary. You know what it is, and for people who haven't experienced this, it's the most craziest thing to feel like when you, like, you're looking at your legs and you can lift them up, but when you use them to stand,
Jello.
it's like they're not working. It's like they're
Yeah,
not working right, and it's the weirdest thing. I had that happen, and like when you are standing, it's like you're on stilts. It's like this is what's going on.
yeah,
So yeah, that's definitely a pretty, crazy
yeah.
experience to have. And you said, so through physical therapy, did something else happen during physical therapy that kind of brought you to that aha moment? Like, you know what? Here it is. I'm gonna just, I'm gonna flip this around and make
Um,
it benefit me.
I think that when I got to a certain point with physical therapy, and they basically told me, okay, that's kind of all you can do. If you do anything more, you're probably going to hurt yourself. Um, that's when things kind of changed for me, and I went, okay, all right, well, I've done all that I can do, and if I don't start dealing with this from an emotional, mental perspective, um, that's what's going to hit me next.
Right.
And so I started getting into therapy. I was terrified to drive
Yeah, I
for
can only imagine.
probably about a year after I was out of the wheelchair. So it was like 2 years after my accident that I finally started driving again. And even now, I still don't like driving at night.
Okay. What did
Um,
it happen at night?
yeah, it was like
Accident.
2 o'clock in the morning.
Oof. Drunk drivers. Yeah.
It was a week before Christmas, and I guess he had been coming from a Christmas party or something like that. Um, wrong place, wrong time, or right place, right time to
Yeah, I was
prevent
gonna say, was it
something
wrong?
worse. Yeah, I wouldn't be who I am without that accident. I wouldn't be who I am without a lot of the negative things that happened in my life.
Right.
Um,
How so, if you don't mind me asking, like with the accident at least?
I wouldn't be as self-sufficient as I am now. Um,
Interesting.
I'm a single mom, and I don't have a lot of family that lives around me. So when, for instance, we need a new piece of furniture, guess who has to get it up 2 flights of stairs? Not my
You.
kids. It's
Right.
me. Um, and
So your
it
legs are even
taught
stronger
me,
than they were before, maybe.
well, I've learned how to like rotate, like roll furniture upstairs instead of trying to lift it.
Adapting, right?
Yeah, exactly. You just got to
Yeah.
adapt to it.
Yeah, for sure. So, and the forgiveness part, do you think you were always kind of forgiving, kind, not to say you weren't kind before, but like, a little more so now after that? Like, is that something that also you feel changed?
Um, no, I think I've always been a really forgiving person. I think what changed was my ability to process my anger and to be able to say, okay, it's okay to be angry. You don't have
Exactly.
to, have some big reaction. You can just see the emotion and say, okay, I'm angry, feel it, and let it go.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to sit in you and
let it pass
fester.
through.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. I think it's been every show so far is what I use because I do NLP coaching almost 10 years now, and with clients and classes. Before the pandemic, I was teaching a lot of classes throughout Vegas, and I like to start off the class saying like, well, think of a negative emotion. I want you to say it out loud or just keep it to yourself. Think of it, and then at the end, I would say like, what is a negative emotion really? When all an emotion, a feeling is just that, a feeling and
Hmm.
emotion. What we do with it, however, creates certain things. But I always tell people, picture yourself standing on the side of the highway or freeway or whatever you want to picture, whether maybe it's the beach, and the waves or the cars or wherever you're at standing that are coming and going are your thoughts and emotions. And
Hmm.
there's no reason to jump in front of one of those depression cars or like those anger cars and let it, hit you hard and then
Right.
you run with it. There's no reason to run with anger. You like obviously we're all gonna get angry, right? We're all gonna feel sadness at some point. We
Exactly.
can't be happy forever. And in your
Exactly.
situation, I mean, I can only imagine the frustration because you went from functioning like a normal human being to literally having all this like extra help, extra this, extra that, and you're just like you don't want it. I could tell you're not the type of
Yeah.
person that you don't want that type of attention. You don't want that kind of just situation in general. I mean, who would?
Yeah. I'd rather do it
But
for myself.
and you do, and you did, in a sense,
Yes.
because with that, I mean, I feel like there was nobody forcing you to forgive. You on your own
No.
decided that, which I think
Yeah.
is really powerful because forgiveness, in my opinion, and just an experience, I think for everyone here is so powerful that it's not so much forgiveness for the other person. It's like forgiveness for you, that forgiveness.
Absolutely. If you don't learn how to forgive, all that's going to happen is negative emotions are going to fester inside you, and it's just going to eat you alive from the inside out. And
Yeah.
that's never pretty for anyone.
Well, yeah, where's that gonna get you?
Exactly.
Everybody, please hit Witch Toker with a favorite. She was our first guest tonight. She is awesome, and she's also very OG on the app since you said 2016.
Yes.
So she's
Thank
definitely an
you.
OG here on the app. And again, everybody, welcome to Grow Through It, where we talk about different adversities, how we don't just go through life, go through adversities, but how we grow through them. And obviously, Witch Toker went from a crazy experience of getting hit by a car, not being able to walk, being stuck in a wheelchair, being frustrated, to forgiving the person, forgiving everything. And now she's rolling furniture up 2 flights of stairs on her own. So you can't
Yeah.
really beat that.
Nope.
But
Own my own business and everything.
and she's got her own business. That is awesome. But yeah, everybody, please hit her with a favorite. She's awesome. And definitely visit her streams. You do stream, right?
I do, yes. I stream most every day, but I've got scheduled shows Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday until the end of this month. And then I'm switching up my schedules, but they're
Okay.
mostly centered around doing witchcraft, um,
Interesting.
and learning about witchcraft and herbs and stones and things like that.
Ooh, I've got myself a Merlinite right here. Love
Oh,
this.
nice.
Keeps me grounded.
Yes.
But thank you so much, Witch Toker, for being a guest
Thank you for
tonight.
having me.
And I appreciate everything. And I can relate a lot to, and actually, the quote for today is very similar and relatable to your experience.
Okay.
But stick around though for the end. Everyone who's here, stick around for the end. We're gonna have a little clash with Witch Toker and the next guest. But there is something I want to say before I bring in Papa Bear, who will be our next guest. I don't know if anyone here has heard of the practice of kintsugi wellness or kintsugi in general. Basically, kintsugi is Japanese ritual. It's from Japan, and what is the whole belief behind it is you are not whole, or you are not quote unquote perfect, or you are not this or that until you've been broken. So what they do in kintsugi in Japan is they take pots, bowls, pots, whatever you want to call it, cups, that are made of glass. And what they do is they break them completely and entirely, but they put them back together as they melt gold. So they use gold, melted gold, to seal all the cracks and crevices of the bowl and bring it back to life, so to speak. So that's what they do, and that's called kintsugi. And it's a beautiful ritual, beautiful practice, and it kind of just fill off, fill off. Is the the philosophy behind it is basically you are not whole, or you are not quote unquote perfect, or you are not incredible or great or whatever until you've actually been somewhat broken in some way. And I feel like in this case it's so accurate because she literally was broken, like, right, like she could not walk, which Toker could not walk for a very long time, and she put herself back together, with obviously with help, obviously with herself, and through mental things, emotional things, physical therapy, things like that. And now, like she said, she's even better than before. So, with that being said, I'm going to now introduce our next guest. He is the Papa Bear of the app. Please make sure you guys favorite him. Again, welcome to Grow Through It. My name is CureAge. I go by Cure usually. But again, and I'm also not ignoring anybody here. I promise. I do see everybody. I see all love, and I am very, very thankful for everyone here. But I'm going to go ahead and bring in our next guest, Mr. Papa Bear. Please give him a favorite. I'm going to squeeze in a sip of water. Oh, Papa Bear, can you try one more time? I don't know if maybe is it your Wi-Fi maybe. Here, Papa Bear, I'm gonna exit you out so that you can try one more time. Okay, sounds good. We will wait for you. So, anyways, again, everybody, I don't know who's come in so far, but welcome again to Grow Through It. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate everybody here, and let's hear Papa Bear's story and how he grew through it. Yes, there it is. We got it. How are you tonight, brother?
Good. Now that I'm finally here.
Here.
So yeah,
You're all the way here now.
that's always so. And I'm plugged in direct to my router, so it's not even like a Wi-Fi issue. It's just happens sometimes.
Yeah,
So thank you,
that's
Sunshine.
just,
Thank you,
it
Nancy.
is
Thank you
what it
all.
is, right?
Yeah. So wow, Wichita, just some amazing stuff she was talking about, and I'm trying to like figure out how to best because there's a lot of overlap between us and how to you know complement what she presented, what she talked about. So
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's you know it's crazy. It's very interesting because hers was very physically damaging for her for a long time, and then which caused obviously the mental damage. But she stopped it right before it kind of happened. And we'll get into that definitely at the end of the show. I'm gonna have both you guys in the box. But yeah, I remember. So we did talk a little bit about you used to be a big churchgoer as a kid growing up, and then you had some people from the church kind of just turn against you, and there was just this bitterness that happened,
yeah, and
and
I
it kind of
think
made it hard.
yeah, without going into detail, I think just to say it in a very vague sort of way is yeah, when I was a kid, altar boy at my church, bad things happened, moved on, but yeah, it affected me later in life. Because I think if we leave it
So
too nebulous, it won't make sense later.
right, so basically, did you just kind of stop going after that?
Yeah, I had a whole lot of anger at the church, and I had a lot of anger at God because it's church. It's
Right,
whatever happens
right.
there.
It
And
connects.
yeah, I even had one of my spouses was very involved in AA and was like, "Oh, you'll have to come." And we got this whole section about agnostics, and I'm like, "I'm not agnostic. I believe in God. I just have to figure out how to get rid of this hate and this anger I have.
Right.
Because if I didn't believe it, it'd be like, something happened and life sucks and move on. But yeah, there's a lot of anger for a lot of years.
Yeah. And so when you like obviously, with Witch Toker's anger, she had a kind of a aha moment when she was sitting there in her wheelchair. Did you feel any like moment similar to that where you just kind of were like, you know what? I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick
Yeah,
and tired of being angry.
yeah. There's a few times of me just like trying to like I didn't quite get where the anger was coming from for a long time. A lot of it I just completely repressed memory of what happened, and
Right.
for a long time it's like I don't know why I'm angry. I just know I am, and little pieces started to come together, and it's like that's why I'm angry. And then it was hanging out with other people in similar situations, and there's a whole lot of anger there, and I was like, after about a year of that, I said, this is not healing. This initially you got to let the anger out. You got to share, and you got to talk about it and just
Right.
yell
That's the hard
sometimes.
part.
And
Yeah.
and then at some point it was like I'm just stuck in anger right now. A lot of the people I was hanging out with were stuck in anger, and it was like I've got to do something different. And I did therapy for quite a few years, and then I came upon I found a different church, a different denomination, different everything, very different from the earlier ones. So there wasn't a lot of because I found out I was having some PTSD issues, and so I had to find a place that didn't resemble where I'd come from,
Right,
or I was
of
going to
course.
constantly be dealing with PTSD. And what I ran across was one of the first times I came back, like, oh, we got a workshop called Radical Forgiveness today. I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And it was developed by,
What a coincidence, right?
yeah, and it really was like the first time I came back. And the guy who created it, there's this little book, Colin Tipping, who's no
Oh,
longer
very
with
cool.
us. And the idea is that we're all here for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. We all come back here, and we all come down on this planet to learn something, to experience something, to grow. And
Right.
one way to look at it is like, how do I know what I came here to learn? Look at the situations in your life. What are the lessons that you keep getting handed to you? That's what we wanted to learn before we came here.
Right.
And in my
Yeah.
case, I looked at it, and it seemed to be obviously trust.
Okay. Right. Because you had your trust broken at a very
Completely
early age.
devastated, and unless you've had something completely, unless you've been completely removed from something, you don't
Right.
know what it is. The analogy is like a fish doesn't know what water is until it's pulled out. Then it's like, oh, this is different. And it goes
Right.
back in water, and now it's like, oh, there's something here. Okay. And that workshop was amazing. In a 3-hour workshop, I got to a point where I actually had about 30 seconds of compassion, like forgiveness and compassion for this one central person. And I was just like, oh my God, this is powerful stuff. To the point where I actually kept reading about it, kept studying it, got certified in being a radical forgiveness coach.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
So
yeah,
you
go
just kind
ahead.
of help people, sorry, not to break in, but
No.
basically being a radical forgiveness coach, you teach people how to forgive?
Yeah, you can. I can do workshops on the overall process. I can also do one-on-one workshop or one-on-one sessions with people, and there's a process you go through, and it really is like walking through the steps. And part of it is sharing the story. You got to feel it to heal it. That a whole idea, and
Hmm.
and
Exactly.
identifying what are the issues you have, and then as you go through it, is to look at um, what did I make it mean, and then what else could it mean. Which talked about it too, is think about what could have happened, seeing it as a blessing
Right.
in disguise. All these things are there. We call it, and other things call it too, but reframing. How can you reframe it so that it's no longer I was a victim to what happened, but this is something
Exactly.
that happened to me to help
For a
me
reason.
be a better person.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. Eventually, I took that a lot of the work I was doing, and I used it to help with the legislation in our state to deal with the issue. Where
Wow.
other people who were involved in it were coming from a place of revenge or anger, I was able to come at from a place of like it was a duty I had. So I wasn't angry, but I was there to hold.
You're on a mission.
Yeah, I was there to hold people accountable, the individuals who were involved, but not to get revenge.
Right.
And then I also took all that work and the healing work and everything I'd done, and I put it together to create a show that I did at our Fringe Festival here in Minnesota. And I put on a show that was called Faith, From Anger into Trust and Hope. And it looked like that. From when I started off, I was really angry. There's a lot of stuff I was mad about. But then I was able to
I can
turn that
imagine.
into figure out, what is it like to trust? And, trust is still an issue for me, and it likely will always be an issue. It shows up in relationships. And I was talking to you about that the other day. It's like how that shows
Yeah.
up sometimes is I have a tendency to overthink and to look for um, the dark side of what's going on. That's my tendency because of what happened.
Right.
But now I actually
It's a
have
cycle.
it is, and now I have people who support me in. Well, what could it have meant? What's something positive? How else could you look at it? In fact, we were talking about this. My friend who she was far away, and she knows that I struggle with the overthinking thing, and so for a couple of days, she didn't reply to my texts, and I was like, "What's going on? Why?" And when we finally talked, she's like, "Yeah, I know how much you're struggling with the overthinking. I wanted to give you a little practice." And I could tell from the way she phrased it that it was like an act of love on her part.
Right. She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to help you.
Yeah, and it was so amazing. And she's been that person for me in a lot of ways. This is my latest sign. I tend to like to have signs up around my house
Why so serious? I
because I'll be
love it.
sitting there in a stream, my stream, her stream, and all of a sudden she'll be like, "Hey, Papa Bear, why are you so serious?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I had my research face on, or I had my," and I'll
Right.
just, and
Focusing.
now, yeah, for last few weeks since she started pointing this out to me, I found myself, walking my dog and be like, "Oh, smile," and just putting on a happier face and putting on a smile and realizing that yeah, my research face, it really is. Um, but yeah, part of, I don't think we talked about this, is part of the after effect of all this stuff that had happened was I had the flu shot in 2020, and it sparked a bunch of adverse effects after the flu shot. And I ended up with chronic pain syndrome. So for months, for 8 months, 9 months, I could barely walk more than, a house or two down and back with my dog. Uh, and it was, it was not fun. And I couldn't play guitar. I couldn't play drums. And I did a lot of work with my neurologist, who's very mindful. Mindfulness is a big part of his work. And I'd have signs like this all over my house. I'd have 10 spots, and every hour, every 2 hours, I'd have a set routine. I'd get up, I'd go to the first sign, and I'd say it out loud. And I'd walk over to the next one, and I'd say the sign, and I'd say the next sign. And I'd go through all the different signs, and it kept me from literally, like just couch potato all day. It got me up on my feet. And the signs were, they're important things like don't forget to breathe, do the work.
Don't forget to breathe. That's a good one.
I know it is. Well, I think we talked about this a little bit. Yeah, if we don't breathe fully, we can't feel fully. And that's like the survival thing. We hold our breath to stop those emotions.
Mm-hmm. Or excitement or anxiety. Our breathing stops.
And so when we release the breath, we can actually let those feelings out. And it's amazing what a difference that make. And one of my favorite.
Did you practice breath work during this whole healing process, and also with just kind of to break through there, when you had the flu shot after effects and everything, and you started seeing that neurologist, did any of that kind of relate or help with your original, situation that you were still dealing with, forgiveness and everything like that? Did that kind of come into play also?
Yeah. So a couple things. One is, so first of all, the breath work. Yeah, I studied actually to be a breath work practitioner before I even remembered what happened to me when I was younger, and was doing a lot of breath work and getting in touch with a lot of stuff. And that work was helpful as I got into the forgiveness stuff, because I had built that base, sort of, as it were, of breathing. I also don't think it's coincidental that I quit smoking 6 months before any memories showed up, because smoking, not to knock smoking, but it numbs us. It keeps us from breathing fully, and therefore it keeps us from feeling fully. And
I never thought about it like that. That's very interesting. I like that.
And breathing is really hard. Yeah, because we want to protect ourselves. That's a normal response. Is we pull away from pain. We pull back. We learn this at like 2. We stub our toe as a toddler, and we're like, oh, it doesn't hurt as bad. We don't consciously think that, but that's where we get it.
Reaction versus response.
Yeah, and so when we can breathe it out.
I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof. I'm sure a lot of people here have heard of Wim Hof and the Wim Hof method. But it's very cool because he does practice this breath work. He does a type of breath work that I don't know it exactly. I don't feel like I want to try it unless I'm actually with Wim Hof or one of his very close coaches, because I know it can be very intense. But you're breathing so intensely and so different than what we're used to, that you start feeling things. You start kind of almost, I wouldn't say hallucinating, but some people have said that. Where you just start to the point where you start letting out the emotions that you don't even know where they came from.
Yeah,
they just start releasing crying, laughter, all these things. It's like a quote unquote, drug or something, but it's really just your breath.
It is, and there's a couple different. There's various schools of breath work. One of which I've done, which is holotropic breath work, is similar to that, where there's intense music playing, and you're doing the circular breathing, and basically you're trying to get to this point where you're just like not even thinking anymore, and the music is going, you're breathing. And I know people have had, I wouldn't say hallucinatory, but that's a really good word for it. They experience things that they wouldn't otherwise experience. And then there's breath work like I did a lot of, which is more about just getting grounded in your body. And when that happens, a lot of times the sadness shows up. And for me,
or any suppressed emotion, I would think, right?
Well, yeah, and my school of thought, a lot of the training I did has led me to this idea that there's two types of emotion. There's love-based ones, and then there's fear-based ones.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Yeah.
it leads you to feel expansive, it's in the love category. And if it
Right.
feels
Of course.
contractive, then it's the fear. And anger in that
Right.
philosophy doesn't exist as an emotion. Anger isn't an emotion so much as a way of movement or a quality of movement, a way of avoiding the sadness or the darker
Right.
the. And
The fear.
there's a great quote in a book. Candace Pert wrote a book called The Molecules of Emotions, which deals with neuropeptides. And she had a friend of hers said something that she quoted. Carolyn Stearns, who's a massage therapist and dancer, writer, and poet, said, "If you look underneath your depression, you'll find anger. Look under your anger and you'll find sadness. And under the sadness is the root of it all, what's really masquerading all the while, fear." And
And I think we can all relate to fear. I mean, we deal with
yeah,
fear in so many different ways, but we all deal with it. We all, and it's like the whole point is, we could go through fear and deal with fear the same way we've always have, or we could, start looking at other ways like you did, and I
totally.
would I would say breath work I feel like is huge in many ways, not just fear and emotions, but just in general. But did
Well,
it
yeah,
take you a while to really feel? I mean, I'm sure you're still like I said before, we're always growing. If we're not growing, if we're not learning, if we're not expanding, like we're basically dying,
yeah.
So when you said you almost became a breathwork coach, did you get to a point of breath work where you just felt that anytime anything happened, you went straight to that, like that was your response thing, and that's kind of what got you through? Or
I,
is it still taking time now to
I'd
get
say
to
it's
that point
taken.
of
Yeah, it's
where
taken.
it's
Yeah, I would say, because it reminds me of something else I want to talk about. Was there's a the cycle of recovery, because recovery is never this straight line, sort of like, yeah, boom, 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 boom,
no,
this is where I'm at.
absolutely not.
It meanders, it goes up, it goes backwards, it goes forward, it goes up, down. And
Roller coaster ride.
yeah, same with our response. There are times that, my response is immediate, like, oh, I can tell I'm stressed out or I'm overthinking. Boom. There are times that I catch myself being serious and I hear my friend's voice saying, "Why so serious?" And I laugh. And then there are other times I can get stuck in the seriousness and I'm spinning wheels, and it's not until something happens, I bump across her stream or something happens, like, oh wow, I'm back in the middle of it, aren't I? And one way I've heard it described as recovery is more like a piano keyboard, that it goes C, I'm starting with C because middle C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And that,
Right.
so sometimes it feels like we go back when we're dealing with our recovery or we're dealing with something.
One step forward, two steps back
Yeah.
sometimes.
And it may not be that we've gone back or that we've regressed, but that we're actually at that, instead of, when we start off at C and also C, D, A, F, G, A, B, and we feel like we've gone all the way back to C, but we're actually at the next C.
Yeah, it's just
But
a different version,
it's a
is what you're
different C.
saying.
It's a higher vibration, but it still feels like C. I read once somewhere, and I was looking for it today. I couldn't find it. There's a study done apparently that they taught a dog to do something based on hitting the C key on the piano. Ding, you hit that, and the dog would do it. Ding, ding, ding. And they
Right.
found that if they hit the any other C key, the dog would do the same thing. But if they hit a
Wow,
D or an F or a G, the dog wouldn't respond. So it could tell that
that's interesting.
the C was the same vibration at different pitches.
Right.
So yeah, and the other is
So
like
that
an
kind of goes
elevator. Oh,
into a vibrational tone state, basically. And did you feel like, is that something you feel like you respond? I mean, I feel like there are definitely people with sound sensitivities to sound that cause and reactions like panic or anxiety, or may trigger
sorry.
certain things.
I'm only smiling because I'm also on the autistic spectrum. So yeah, definitely sounds have a huge impact.
They
And
do for me with my Tourette's as well.
yeah, so there are
So I
times that
do.
yeah, the sound hits and it's just like, well, and with autism, the ears are so, for some of us, our senses are so heightened that
Right.
a fire alarm. My son talked about this because he's also on the spectrum. Is when the fire alarms would go off at school, he was in pain.
Mm,
That's how much it hurt. It caused him physical pain when the fire alarms would go off, and we had to finally work it into his care plan that
right.
they would give him advance notice before the fire alarms. so that he could easily prepare himself and wouldn't be caught off guard. And I also just want to talk about my son again for a minute, because so much of what I've learned and gone through has made me a better dad. Most people who know me well know that that's like my one thing that I am. I am a dad. Hence the Papa
Right.
Bear. My
Papa
kids call
bear,
me
yeah.
Papa because I have a stepdaughter and I have a son, and we wanted a name that respected my stepdaughter's dad. So we didn't want
Mhm.
Dad because she had a dad. So
Right.
we picked Papa so they could both call me the same thing. It wouldn't be like one says Dad and one says whatever. But my son has learned so much. When I grew up in a house where crying was not, yeah, you just didn't cry. The common reaction to crying was my dad saying, I'll give you something to cry about.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I think we've all heard that,
yeah,
especially males. Growing up as a
yep,
male, we're taught that crying is for girls or crying is for babies, and then, which cause a lot of issues later down the line in life.
yep,
And
yeah,
so, with your experience, kind of just going back with your experience with the church and then the trust issues and the anger you had, and then kind of like, Witch Toker, you had a forgiveness, a mission that to not just like you said the other people kind of came from revenge and from anger, where you came as more like a mission with forgiveness because of everything that you had done for yourself to grow from that situation, which is huge and it's admirable, obviously. And you
thank you.
didn't just go from there, you took it to a whole all kinds of different steps to
Well,
becoming
yeah,
a coach, and yeah,
yep,
forgiveness and breath work and all this stuff. And I was gonna ask, like, so when you do, how we were talking about just a minute ago, when you go those couple steps forward and the one step back, when it feels like that you are, does it ever kind of trigger you or frustrate you in a certain way that you are still dealing with, or
yeah,
growing through?
and those
Tends to show.
opportunities, yeah, and the opportunities for learning are still there. In fact, about 6 weeks ago, maybe it was 6, 8 weeks ago, I had a flashback, and I hadn't had a flashback in several years, and I thought I was, I thought I was done with those, um, and it threw me. It really threw me, and I was really upset for a few days, and I was falling into wallowing, and like poor me, and oh,
Victim mentality.
oh my God, total victimhood, and my friend, who is my why so serious friend, just said to me, she goes, basically, why don't you fight? And it was the simplest phrase. And it wasn't done in a place like blaming the victim, like, oh, just get over it. It was, you need to
Pushing
fight.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Pushing,
said,
growing through. Yeah.
yep. And I sat there and I went, I kept wanting to say, but you don't understand, but you don't understand. PT, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And also it was like, why
The
don't I
defense
fight?
mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't I fight? Dang. So yeah, I still have those moments. And that was one of the things I have on my little list in here is finding your support people, because
Absolutely.
she's amazing. She's an amazing friend, because she is one of those people who is, when I need a kick in the pants, I kind of turn my butt towards her direction, because it's like, go ahead, give me the kick.
Give me the boot.
Yeah, but I want to go
Yeah,
back just
that's
for a
awesome.
second, yeah, about my son thing, because I grew up in that house where you didn't cry, and what we found out is my dad never wanted us to cry, not just because boys don't cry, but because his dad had physically abused him severely.
Mm.
And he had so much pain and sadness. He talked about it twice, or brought it up a couple times. It's the only time I saw his eyes tear up. He got like, you know, watery eyes as he talked about it, and then he just shut it down. It's like, you don't understand. And I realized that every time we cried, we activated his sadness. His sadness came up, and he couldn't handle it. He didn't know what to do with it. And so
Right.
he'd shut us down so that he wouldn't be triggered. Well, I wanted different for my son. So, and not from a place of, against my dad, but learning from my dad. And I taught my son early, because we tell kids things like, you pick them up like, oh, it's okay, which seems really nice, but it's really telling them, don't cry, don't cry. So what he
Right.
got
And
was a
it's not like they
message.
mean it in a bad way.
No, no,
They're
no
just,
one's trying to do
it's a
it.
condition, right? It's a condition
Yep.
verb, it's or sentence. It's just verbally conditioned
Yep.
to,
Oh,
parenthood and
yeah.
even the people.
Yeah.
Which Toker, if you're still here, could you request the box and so we could all three finish the show off together in the
Yeah.
comments,
So,
or in the.
yeah, just to wrap this up too while we're waiting on her. So he got the message early on, it's okay to cry. When he get hurt, it's okay to cry. Let your feelings out. He'd come home
Yeah.
from grade school sometimes, like you could tell he'd had a rough day. And I'd be like, how was your day? And he'd come and he'd be like, I've got to let my feelings out. And he'd go to his room and he'd get on his bed and he'd bawl for like 5 minutes. And then he'd come out and goes, okay, here's what happened today, blah, 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 blah. And he'd tell me everything. Well, that became his routine. That's what he grew up with. And it made such a huge difference for him.
Right.
He's now second year college student. I'm sitting here this weekend, like, because he went back to college this weekend. So I'm back to empty nest. And it's like, I
All
keep
right.
waiting for him to knock at my door saying, oh, hey, Dad. And
Right.
so, yeah. And then, yeah.
Everybody, again, thank you everybody for coming and for showing all the love. Witch Toker, are you still here? We want to get you in the box with Papa Bear just to end off the show.
Oh, and then while we're
But
waiting
yeah,
for her, I was going to just say, because the one thing we kind of skipped, probably because I jumped the gun, was, yeah, how long I've been here, all that introductory stuff. Just, it's only been about a year. I just celebrated my first year of streaming a few weeks ago.
Oh, congrats. Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been on the app for a year, you've been streaming for a year.
I've been streaming for a year. I started doing checking out other people's lives back like last June, I think. I was bored.
Okay.
I was like, oh, let's look. And I was like, what's this? People are just talking. I'd go into streams and I'd type. And then like I saw other people getting the boxes. I'll try it. And someone once saw that I played guitar. Like, oh, you should come in and play guitar. It's like, okay. And I brought my guitar and I played. And they're like, oh, wow, you're really good. You should come. You should stream. I'm like, okay. So last August 6th, I said, what the heck? What the heck? I'll try. And so
Right.
I fired up the
Well,
phone and everything and did my first stream.
and I found that, like, with these episodes, that a lot of people, this has been kind of a safe haven for a lot of people, and they've come to this app when they were, least expecting it, obviously, and when they were in dire need of some kind of human interaction that was not able to get fulfilled outside. And I think that's a big thing with what happened 2 years ago in the pandemic. And
Yep.
even in cases like your case, and I think Witch Toker may not be here, unfortunately, but even, in her case too, like, she may not have been physically alone, but going through that alone, and just like you and all of us who have struggled with adversities, like, you may be surrounded by great people, and that's huge and important. And at the same time, though, we have to remember, like, this is our growth. This is our, like, they can hold our hand, they can stay with us, they can be by our side, but essentially this is up to us to grow through it, or to, become bitter, like Witch Toker was mentioning early. Is right away off the bat, she was angry, she was bitter towards everybody and everything. And that's so easy to fall into that.
Yeah.
Because when things are going wrong, like, our natural reaction is to be that way, and which is fine. People get upset and feel like, oh, well, we can't feel this way because it's not right, or we shouldn't be feeling angry because it's not their fault. Instead, it's just like, you know what, you're going through a big thing right now and it's rough. So it's okay to be a little bit mad and bitter, as long as we don't stay that way. When we find that thing, or we find that moment, or those people, or this app that really helps us kind of grow out of that bitterness, anger, revenge, like you were saying, those other people came with revenge.
Yep.
So, that's huge. And there's so many outlets, I feel like, in the world that we can find. Like, you found breath work, you found forgiveness, and you're now a coach in it. And, like, for me, I stuck around where it was as hard as it was, and even for a long time I couldn't even watch UFC fights, because I was like, this was going to be me. And even to this day, it's not easy all the time. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's hard, but just watching a UFC fight, I was like, this would have been me. this could have been me. But then that's the victim mentality coming back. So, and I'm like, no, no. Then I look at the coaches in the corner, and I was like, that is me. Not literally, but well, a couple times. But you know what I mean? Like that's what I look at now.
Well, that's the thing with PTSD too. PTSD symptoms aren't problematic. What they are, they're just normal things that we've developed when something bad happens, when trauma happens, to protect us. They become problematic when we knee jerk use them, as opposed to,
Right.
because what you're describing is one of the classic things to help deal with PTSD. I found for me is when it's coming up is find something that is in the space I'm in that could not have been in the space where it happened, where the trauma happened. So maybe
Right.
it's a goofy hat that I have, or my guitar because I didn't play guitar, or some. I say goofy hat because hanging over here. I have no idea why it's hanging over here now, but it's my goofy hat.
Just the little, it's funny because it's like people say, well, what about the little things in life, or be grateful for the little things in life, like all these things. But when you really think about it, it's like, are these things little? That you say, like this goofy hat of yours, or for me, like bracelets or whatever, these crystals, or just looking at plants. I love plants. These little things they're really not so little. If we really think about it, these little things are huge. They're what make us, help us grow. They're what make us feel good. That's not little. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It
no, I
just
agree with you.
seems little in an outside perspective compared to careers, school, jobs, this and that, cars, all materialistic stuff. But like, just waking up and looking at these little things, it's what makes our life even better.
Well, if you think about it too, even the big things like job, career, family are a bunch of little steps put together. Nobody
Absolutely.
nobody started as the president of a company. They
No, of
started at
course
this,
not.
and they slowly, and there are these little steps along the way, and I love how you, but yeah, it depends on the person. I have things that mean the world to me that if someone else came and saw them, they'd be like, "What is this little stupid kitschy thing here?" It's like, yeah. So it's the little things, and the little things are sometimes easier to carry around with us. I used to give my son a pebble, a rock, a nice smooth stone that he could keep in his pocket, so that I tell him anytime you're upset or you're feeling like you're gonna, really get upset, just grab the rock and just rub it, and that will help you physically
Yeah, it's a
remember.
sensory,
Yeah, it's a sensory thing,
for
and by
sure.
doing that, he'd be like, okay, and it was a calming thing for him. It
Hmm.
was a little thing. It was a stone. It's something
Have you
that,
ever seen
yeah.
the in China they have these two big beads,
Oh yeah, the where
they're
you,
usually made, and
yep,
you just kind of
you get a
roll
little
them.
chime in them,
Those
and you
are
just,
those are incredible. Yeah,
the
exactly.
ball things.
Those are the ball. Those are definitely, perfect for, sensory deprivation or sensory just issues, so that you can like kind of find that sort of peace or that calmness just to
Yep.
like grab. Sometimes I have the little strength grippers. Um, so yeah, again, everybody, thank you for coming to episode 3 of Grow Through It. My name again is CureAge, or Cure. Um, this is Papa Bear. He's been our guest tonight, our second guest. I think our first guest had to hop out. But please hit the favorite for me and for Papa Bear. He does stream. And I appreciate all the love. This whole time I've not been ignoring anybody, I promise. Just been respecting the guests. um, and next week we will have a couple guests already lined up. We have Daniel. He's an awesome guy I recently met. And we also have Be Legit. There he is. And Be Legit will be here. There are other guests next week. This time Mondays, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight for you Eastern people. You Eastern, sorry, Eastern part of the U.S. people. I don't know about the other countries right now,
East
but
Coast people, yeah.
East Coast for sure. And again, like I feel like, yeah, I wish Witch Toker was still here, because I feel like the kintsugi practice, if anyone wants to know more about it, you can look it up, or if you want me to spell it, I can. It's Kintsugi, kintsugi, and that is like basically very fitting for, this show. It's us being broken, so to speak, in a sense, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, whether it's, mental, whatever it is, we're torn down at some part of our life. And it's only until we've been put back together with the gold, and that gold is how they put back their pottery, basically. If, I don't know, they use pots, they use bowls, they use cups, and when they shatter it, they put it back together with, this seal melted gold, and then it's even more beautiful than it was before. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a huge thing, especially tonight, with Witch Toker's story, with your stories, that you were just this person. I'm sure you were great in your ways, but after dealing with everything, and not just dealing with it, but growing through it and growing from it, into being a coach, and now, and being able to have classes that you did, and finding these little things, quote unquote, on the little, that help you with your life. You are, I feel like I could say this is, you're an even better person than you were if this wouldn't have never happened to you, if you were
Yeah.
never kintsugi'd, so to speak.
No, I agree. And it's interesting because I think it was just yesterday, the day before, recently, I was on Instagram and there's a post somebody had dealing with that showed like a vase being cracked and then repaired with gold. So I just ran across it a couple days ago before coming here. Speaking of Insta, there's my Insta if anybody wants it.
Yeah, so definitely everybody give Papa Bear a favorite. And if you haven't already, hit my star at the top, favorite me. Every Monday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. I don't know why I cannot speak tonight. Midnight Eastern time, we have Grow Through It. Next week will be episode 4, where we have Daniel, and we will have Be Legit. And we will definitely hear some very interesting stories, because I've already talked them a little bit before, and it's going to be pretty wild. I'm definitely happy with the guest tonight. And Papa Bear, thank you so much for
You're
being on the
welcome.
show tonight.
Yeah, and
I
if anybody,
enjoyed it immensely.
yeah, and if anybody out there is dealing or struggling with forgiveness and you want to explore radical forgiveness, just hit me up and we'll talk.
Absolutely. But yeah, everybody, thank you again for all the love for Papa Bear, all the love for me, all the love just being here, the gifts, everything, and the conversation, and just listening. I promise I was not ignoring anybody. You guys were all here in my eyes. And I think today's biggest takeaway for me, you guys can share in the comments what you feel like is the biggest takeaway for you. For me, I feel very much that, again, the kintsugi thing really hits home, because I think we've all experienced of some kind of broken, where whether we've lost someone, whether we've lost ourselves. And from my own story, from Witch Toker's story, and even Papa Bear's, there was a time after that adversity, that the rough time, where we did kind of lose ourselves. We weren't who we typically would be. And it wasn't until we decided, this isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. This isn't who I used to be. What am I going to do? How can I do it? And where can I do it? Like, what is it going to take for me to get into a better place? So those are just some questions that I know that we've all, I'm sure, have asked ourselves. I know I did. Um, the biggest part of that, though, I would say, would be finding that answer. Keep asking until we find that answer. So, everybody, thank you again for being on Grow Through It. Papa Bear, Witch Toker were our guests tonight. Next week, we will have Daniel, and we will have Be Legit. So, I look forward to next week. I will be back on in about half hour. So, if you guys want to come back later for a little after show, I will be back. But I'm going to go ahead and end the show now and close out. Thank you again for everybody. And I'll see you guys later on. And thank you again for all the love.